From Aztec to Empire, the Great Mexican Migration. Here, on islands shrouded by northern lagoons, the Mexica people lived in harmony with their gods, unaware that their peaceful existence was about to be shattered by a divine command that would change the course of human history. The vision came to the priests like thunder on a clear day. Huitzilopochtli, the hummingbird god of war, appeared in their sacred dreams, with feathers blazing like obsidian fire and eyes that held the fury of 1,000 suns. His voice echoed through the temple chambers like the beating of eagle wings. Leave this place of comfort, leave these familiar shores. I will lead you to a land where you shall rule over all nations, where your eagle will perch upon the cactus of destiny. The year was 1111 CE, though the Mexica measured time by the sacred calendar that bound earth to sky. To abandon Aztlan meant abandoning everything: ancestral tombs, familiar hunting grounds, the lagoons where their children learned to fish. Yet the priests understood this was not merely migration, but pilgrimage. Not exile, but ascension. The hummingbird god had spoken, and his chosen people would follow wherever the sacred bundle led them. As dawn broke over Aztlan for the last time in Mexica memory, hundreds of families gathered their few possessions: obsidian knives, feathered cloaks, sacred seeds, and most precious of all, the portable shrine containing Huitzilopochtli's image. Behind them lay security. Ahead lay the unknown, but in their hearts burned the certainty that their God would forge them into something greater than they had ever dared to imagine. The world they entered, the Mexico that the Mexica entered in the 12th century, was already ancient, a land where civilizations had risen and fallen for over 2 millennia. Massive pyramids cast shadows across valleys where forgotten kings once ruled, while trade routes carried obsidian, jade and cacao between coastal ports and mountain settlements. This was Mesoamerica at its peak, a world of competing city-states, sophisticated astronomy, and agricultural techniques that fed millions. The Valley of Mexico sprawled like a jewel in the highlands, its chain of lakes reflecting snow-capped volcanoes that pierced the sky. Lake Texcoco dominated the center, its alkaline waters surrounded by smaller, fresher lakes that sustained the region's agricultural wealth. Established powers controlled the most fertile shores: Culhuacan, with its claims to ancient Toltec legitimacy; Azcapotzalco, whose Tepanec rulers commanded vast tribute networks; and dozens of smaller city-states that formed a complex web of alliances and rivalries. For the established elites, who lived in palaces of cut stone and wore cloaks of quetzal feathers, the arrival of another Chichimec tribe from the north was barely noteworthy. These dog people, as sedentary populations dismissively called the semi-nomadic groups, periodically descended from the frontier with their rough clothes and barbaric customs. Some became useful as warriors, others were absorbed into the lower classes, most eventually faded into obscurity. But the Mexica possessed something their predecessors lacked: unshakable faith in their divine destiny. Where others saw the lakes as barriers, they envisioned possibilities. Where established powers saw worthless marshland, they glimpsed the foundation of empire. Their decades of wandering had forged them into something unique, a people who could adapt to any environment, fight when necessary, negotiate when prudent, and never lose sight of their ultimate purpose. The political landscape they navigated was as treacherous as the mountain passes they had crossed. City-states rose and fell based on military prowess, trade advantages, and the shifting loyalties of tributary communities. Marriage alliances could create kingdoms overnight, while a single betrayal could topple dynasties. Religion permeated every aspect of life, from the timing of military campaigns to the layout of urban centers, creating opportunities for those who understood how to speak the language of the gods. The Mexica learned quickly. They observed the rituals that legitimized power, the trade networks that generated wealth, and the military techniques that determined survival. They served as mercenaries for Culhuacan, absorbing lessons in statecraft and strategy. They endured insults and expulsions from Azcapotzalco, each humiliation teaching them about the vulnerabilities of the powerful. Every setback became education, every victory a step closer to fulfilling Huitzilopochtli's promise. Climate shaped their journey as much as politics. The 13th century brought changes that disrupted established patterns, droughts that withered crops, floods that destroyed cities, and population movements that destabilized entire regions. Yet these very disruptions created opportunities for adaptable peoples willing to exploit the chaos. The Mexica had survived the northern wilderness. They could certainly survive the politics of the Valley of Mexico. 3. The wandering years. The migration from Aztlan was no single march, but a generational odyssey spanning 2 centuries. Tenoch, whose name would echo through history, emerged as the paramount leader during the crucial early phases. Unlike the priest rulers of sedentary civilizations, Tenoch embodied the dual nature of nomadic leadership, warrior, and visionary, pragmatist and mystic. His weathered hands could string a bow or negotiate treaties with equal skill, while his eyes held the unwavering certainty that had sustained his people through 100 trials. "We are not refugees," Tenoch reminded his followers during moments of doubt. "We are pilgrims carrying the future of the world in our sacred bundle. Every step southward brings us closer to the throne Huitzilopochtli has prepared for us." His words carried weight because they came from a man who had led successful raids against hostile tribes, negotiated safe passage through enemy territory, and found water in seemingly barren landscapes. The journey tested every bond that held Mexica society together. Families were organized into Calpoli kinship groups that shared resources, responsibilities, and often fate itself. Each Calpoli maintained its own identity, carried its own sacred objects, and followed its own sub-leaders, yet all acknowledged the authority of the main council and the priests, who bore Huitzilopochtli's image. This flexible structure allowed the Mexica to adapt to changing circumstances, while maintaining social cohesion. Huitzilopochtli, the high priest, served as the spiritual counterpoint to Tenoch's secular leadership. Thin as an obsidian blade and just as sharp, he interpreted omens, maintained the sacred calendar, and ensured that the migration followed divine rather than merely human logic. When practical concerns threatened to overwhelm religious purpose, Huitzilopochtli's voice cut through the noise like a flint knife. "The hummingbird god tests our faith, not our comfort. We follow the sacred bundle, not our stomach." Their children, like young Mexidli, who would grow up to become a legendary war chief, knew no permanent home except the community itself. They learned to read landscapes for water sources and defensive positions, to identify edible plants and hostile tracks, to fight with whatever weapons came to hand. These migration-born Mexica developed capabilities that would serve them well in the political warfare of the Valley of Mexico: adaptability, loyalty to the group above personal comfort, and absolute faith in their ultimate destiny. The established powers they encountered underestimated them consistently. At Culhuacan, the ruling dynasty needed warriors for their conflicts, but treated the Mexica as disposable mercenary. King Cox offered them marginal lands in exchange for military service, never imagining that these rough nomads were studying his administration, learning his weaknesses, and preparing for the day when they would no longer serve but the relationship with Culhuacan taught the Mexica crucial lessons in statecraft. They observed how tribute flowed from subject communities, how marriage alliances cemented political relationships, and how religious ceremonies legitimized temporal power. When tensions eventually erupted, some sources blame a horrific sacrificial incident that shocked even violence-accustomed Culhuacan. The Mexica departed with far more than they had arrived with knowledge. Their time under Azcapotzalco's shadow proved equally educational. The Tepanec ruler Tezozomoc commanded the valley's most extensive tribute network, his palace filled with goods from every corner of Mesoamerica. Yet even this mighty king needed the Mexica's military skills, hiring them for campaigns against rival city-states. Each battle taught the nomads about the weaknesses of sedentary warfare, the importance of supply lines, and the psychology of urban populations who fought to defend specific places, rather than portable communities. But it was their growing reputation as warriors that truly distinguished the Mexica from other Chequimec bands. Unlike raiders who struck and fled, they fought with disciplined ferocity that impressed even their employer. Their weapons might be simpler than those of established armies, but their willingness to die for each other created tactical advantages that sophisticated equipment couldn't match. Word spread, hire the Mexica if you want victory, but watch them carefully, for servants today might become masters tomorrow. The women of the migration deserve special recognition, though sources often obscure their contribution. Mothers like Chimalma bore children in temporary camps, raised them during endless journeys, and preserved cultural traditions that kept Mexica identity intact. Across generations, they processed food, maintained clothing, and served as healers when violence or disease struck the community. Their marriages often cemented relationships with local populations, creating networks of kinship that would prove invaluable in later political maneuvering. 4. The Eagle and the Cactus. By 1325 CE, the Mexica had been wandering for over 2 centuries. They had served masters, been expelled by patrons, fought in countless battles, and absorbed the hard lessons of Mesoamerican politics. Yet Huitzilopochtli's promise remained unfulfilled. Where was the sign? Where was the eagle that would mark their destined homeland? The answer came in Lake Texaco's marshy heart, where small islands rose barely above water level during the dry season and disappeared entirely during the rain. To established powers, this was worthless wasteland, too wet for reliable agriculture, too exposed for defense, too isolated for trade, perfect for dumping unwanted nomads who had outlived their usefulness. Tenoch's grandson, who bore his ancestor's name and inherited his vision, led the scouting party that would change history. The morning mist rose from the lake's surface like incense from temple braziers, as their canoes glided between reed beds and waterfowl erupted in clouds of wings and cries, while fish jumped in silver arcs that caught the early sunlight. The island they approached seemed no different from dozens of others. A few acres of solid ground covered with nopal cactus and scrub vegetation. Then they saw it, perched atop the tallest cactus. An eagle of magnificent proportions held a serpent in its talons. The great bird's feathers gleamed like polished obsidian. Its eyes held the fierce intelligence of a god, and around its head seemed to shimmer a halo of divine light. For a heartbeat that felt like eternity, human and divine gazes locked. Then the eagle released its serpent, spread wings that spanned the width of the canoe, and soared into the sky with a cry that echoed across the waters. "Here," Tenoch whispered, his voice carrying absolute certainty. "This is the place. This is where Huitzilopochtli commands us to build his city." The priests quickly performed the necessary rituals, driving stakes into the muddy shore to mark the sacred boundaries. They named their settlement Tenoch, Tatat, Tlan, place of the stone cactus, and began the back-breaking work of transforming vision into reality. The first structures were simple reed huts raised on platforms to survive the seasonal flooding. Fresh water had to be brought from springs on the mainland. Building materials had to be transported by canoe across miles of open lake. Yet what seemed like desperate improvisation was actually strategic genius. The lake provided natural defense against land-based attack. The marshy environment, which the Mexica had learned to navigate during their wandering years, became their ally against enemies unfamiliar with amphibious warfare. Most importantly, the island's central location offered potential access to trade routes that connected every corner of the valley. The established powers watched with amusement tinged by unease, as Capotzalco's tribute collectors could barely locate the new settlement. let alone extract regular payment. Culhuacan's armies found their traditional tactics useless against opponents who could retreat into reed beds and return under cover of darkness. The Mexica weren't just building a city. They were creating a new type of political entity that existed partially outside the established order. The Tenochtitlan's greatest innovation wasn't military or political. It was environmental. Faced with limited land for agriculture, the Mexica began constructing chinampas, artificial islands built from layers of mud, vegetation, and human ingenuity. These floating gardens transformed the lake from a barrier into a resource, creating incredibly fertile farmland that could support dense urban populations. The construction of chinampas required collective effort on an unprecedented scale. Entire communities worked in carefully choreographed teams, some diving to scoop mud from the lake bottom, others weaving reed mats to contain the soil still, others transplanting vegetables and flowers onto the newly created surfaces. Children too young for heavy labor served as messengers and water carriers, while elders contributed knowledge about which plants grew best in different conditions. The early chinampas were crude affairs compared to the sophisticated agricultural systems that would later feed hundreds of thousands, but they proved the concept. Lake Texaco, which everyone else saw as an obstacle, became the foundation of Mexico prosperity. Fish, waterfowl, salt, and agricultural produce flowed into their markets, while their island location made them natural intermediaries for trade between different regions. More than practical advantages, the successful establishment of Tenochtitlan fulfilled the spiritual promise that had sustained the Mexica through centuries of wandering. The eagle's appearance validated every sacrifice, every hardship, every moment of doubt. They were no longer refugees or nomads or servants of foreign masters. They were the chosen people of Huitzilopochtli, destined to rule from their city on the lake. The first temple they built was modest, a simple pyramid of stone and mud that rose barely 30 feet above the water. But even this humble structure served as a powerful symbol visible to every canoe that crossed the lake. The Mexica had arrived. They had found their promised land. Now they would begin their ascent to empire. Opposition came swiftly. Threatened by Mexico independence and growing prosperity, Culhuacan attempted to reassert control through economic pressure and military intimidation. As Capozalco demanded tribute payments the islanders could barely afford, smaller city-states organized raids designed to strangle the new settlement before it could establish itself. Yet each attack only strengthened Mexico's resolve and refined their defensive capability. Their warriors learned to fight from canoes, using the lake's geography to create tactical advantages that land-based armies couldn't counter. Their diplomats began forming alliances with other communities that felt oppressed by the established power. Their merchants established trade relationships that bypassed traditional commercial networks. The foundation of Tenochtitlan marked more than the end of migration. It announced the beginning of a new age, from the eagle's perch to the empire's rise, from Aztlan's mists to the lake's golden reflections. The Great Mexica journey was transforming from pilgrimage into conquest. Legacy of the long road, the Mexica migration from Aztlan to Tenochtitlan, where established civilizations based legitimacy on ancient bloodlines or control of fixed territories. The Mexica claimed authority through divine mandate and demonstrated capability. Their centuries of wandering had taught them that true strength came not from what you possessed, but from what you could achieve. This revolutionary mindset would define everything that followed. Within decades of founding the Mexica began the series of alliances and conquests that would create the largest empire in pre-Columbian American history. Their experience as nomads made them natural diplomats, equally comfortable negotiating with mountain tribes and coastal traders. Their memories of servitude made them ruthless in exploiting the weaknesses of established powers. The agricultural innovations pioneered during their early years on Lake Texaco became the economic foundation for imperial expansion. Chinampa farming could support population densities that made large standing armies possible, while the lake's resources funded the infrastructure projects that connected Tenok to every corner of Mexico. The same ingenuity that had transformed marshland into farmland would later build causeways, aqueducts, and palaces that amazed Spanish conquistadors. Yet perhaps the migration's most profound legacy was psychological. The Mexica never forgot that they had been wanderers before they became rulers, servants before they commanded empires. This knowledge made them simultaneously assimil and ambitious, humble enough to learn from every culture they encountered, ambitious enough to believe they could surpass their teacher. When Hernan Cortés arrived in 1519, he confronted not just a powerful empire, but a people whose entire identity was built around overcoming impossible odds. The story of the Great Migration resonates across centuries, because it captures humanity's eternal struggle between comfort and greatness. The Mexica could have remained in Aztlan, safe in their familiar lagoons, content with their modest prosperity. Instead, they chose the harder path, the divine calling that demanded everything and promised transformation. Their willingness to abandon security for purpose became the engine of empire. Archaeological evidence continues to validate the core elements of Mexica migration account. Settlement patterns show movement from north to south over the specified time period. Ceramic styles and agricultural techniques trace the cultural exchanges that shaped Mexica identity. Most remarkably, the environmental knowledge they displayed, particularly their mastery of lacustrine agriculture, could only have developed through generational experience with wetland ecosystems. The genetic legacy of the migration survives in modern Mexico, where millions of people carry DNA markers linking them to the populations that first settled the Valley of Mexico. The linguistic legacy persists in Nahuatl place names that stretch from the American Southwest to Central America, marking the ancient routes the Mexica followed. The cultural legacy lives on in contemporary indigenous communities that maintain traditions of collective decision-making, environmental adaptation, and spiritual relationship with the land. But perhaps the most enduring legacy is aspiration. The Mexica migration demonstrates that determined communities can reshape their circumstances through faith, persistence, and willingness to sacrifice immediate comfort for long-term vision. From Aztlan's mists to Tenok, from wandering nomads to imperial masters, their journey proves that ascent is always possible for those brave enough to follow their eagle. The Great Migration ended where empire began, but the spirit that carried the Mexica across centuries and continents, the conviction that divine purpose could overcome any obstacle, would echo through Mexican history long after the last temple fell. In 1325, when the eagle landed on the cactus, it marked not just the fulfillment of ancient prophecy but the beginning of a legacy that refuses to die. Today, as Mexico City sprawls across the ancient lake bed where Tenok once rose, millions of people live above the foundation stones laid by those first Mexica settlers. The pyramids may be buried beneath modern streets, but the dream that built them, the belief that nothing is impossible for those who dare to ascend, burns as brightly as ever in the hearts of their descendants.